If the Constitution only protects real Americans, why does the government keep arresting everyone else? Funny how jurisdiction works when power wants something. There's a meme floating around social media right now that says the Constitution was written for Americans only, not the world, not immigrants, not criminals, just real Americans. And look, one part of that is technically true. The U.S. Constitution is not the world Constitution. Congratulations, you've correctly identified the title of the document. But then comes the leap, the part where ideology faceplants into reality. Non-citizens and criminals do not possess rights under this document. That's not patriotism, that's a slogan, dressed up as law and hoping that nobody actually checks the receipts. Let's take a short but necessary tangent to discuss originalism for a brief moment. This is the idea in judicial philosophy arguing that the Constitution should be understood according to the meaning its words had at the time they were written and ratified. First, there's the seance. In a very real sense, originalism is the art of summoning the Founding Fathers like a constitutional Ouija board. Judges place their hand on the planchette and start leading a chant, "What would Madison do?" Then they wait for the spirits of 1787 to spell out modern policy positions on semi-automatic rifles, digital surveillance, corporate personhood, and whether social media brands like TikTok are a national threat or just national embarrassment. Because the founders, who had probably never encountered indoor plumbing, are all expected to have firm opinions on all of these. Then there is the time travel gymnastics, because originalism requires a special kind of historical yoga. The pretzel pose, twisting 18th century phrasing into specific 21st century outcomes. The selective stretch, reaching deep into history for one quote that supports your argument while ignoring the 47 others that don't. The elastic clause, which ironically is not the elastic clause, stretching the phrase "shall not be infringed" to cover technologies that would have made George Washington swoon and faint like a Victorian heroine. That's a full workout, but only for the parts of history that are convenient. And finally, there's the mythic pantheon, where originalists become the priesthood of the sacred parchment, sworn to preserve the exact intentions of men who argued for days about how many votes a state with 30,000 people should get. The precise meaning of words written before the invention of the zipper. And the eternal wisdom of a document that needed 10 amendments within 2 years of being born. Originalists treat the Constitution like a relic forged by gods, not humans who were late on their rent and worried about smallpox. Essentially, originalism has become the philosophy that says the Constitution is perfect, timeless, unchanging, except when we need it to mean something else, in which case we consult the founders' vibes. Originalism isn't about history, it's about ventriloquism. Dead guys, old wigs, modern opinions. And somehow the founders always seem to agree with whoever's holding the microphone. Returning back to the meme's assertion that non-citizens don't possess rights under this document, have you ever noticed how many of your rights simply vanish when the government wants something from you? Funny how that works. For instance, you're innocent. If you're innocent, you've got rights. If you're accused, you have fewer. If you're poor, you've got almost none. And if you're not the right kind of American, suddenly your freedom, even as a citizen, requires papers, please. Here's the problem that most people seem to have with the Constitution. It doesn't talk like cable news. It doesn't say citizens most of the time. It says persons over and over and over again. That wasn't an accident. That was deliberate, because the Constitution isn't a rewards program for good behavior. It's a set of chains on government power. Rights don't exist because the state likes you. They exist because the state can't be trusted. And courts have been crystal clear on this for more than 2 centuries. Many constitutional protections apply to all persons under U.S. jurisdiction, regardless of citizenship. And if you think non-citizens aren't under U.S. jurisdiction, ask anyone who's ever had ICE kick in a door or harass them on the street, just how fast jurisdiction suddenly bones them up the ass with a red-hot poker and a microscope. According to originalists, the government says that non-citizens don't have rights, but it arrests them, taxes them, jails them, and deports them. That's a funny kind of no jurisdiction. That's like saying, you're not invited to the party, I'll get it in the basement. The meme also suggests that criminals don't have rights. That's adorable. But here's your reality check that bounced. Criminals are the entire reason we wrote the rules in the first place. Criminals definitely have rights. That's literally why we have a 4th, 5th, 6th, and 8th Amendments. Hell, if everyone behaved, we wouldn't need the 4th Amendment at all. We'd just need a suggestion box. Criminals don't lose rights. They lose liberty through due process. And that distinction matters, unless you're cool with the government just skipping trials because the vibes were bad. The founders didn't say innocent until proven guilty, unless we're angry. They said limit the government first, because someday it will be mad at you. The idea that rights disappear when the state disapproves is not originalism. It can be called a number of things, but originalism doesn't even make the cut. It's jurisprudential fan fiction, or law written by vibes and grievances by people who didn't actually read the book but really like the uniforms. And speaking of uniforms, strongman pageantry is authority claiming power because of its costume and its performance. Or my personal favorite, permissions-based freedom. Because if your freedom only works when the government likes you, that's not liberty. That's a hall pass, and sooner or later the teacher takes it back. And here's where the meme accidentally tells the truth, because we are stuck arguing slogans instead of structure, and because the 1787 framework is decaying under modern pressure. Career politicians who are immune to accountability, lifetime judicial appointments with zero ethics enforcement, a Congress that won't term limit itself, and a system designed for horse-drawn scandals trying to govern algorithmic power. So people retreat to tribal myths. They don't trust institutions, so they create the Constitution in their image, or at least the one that's in their heads. That's not American Spring. That's American stagnation. The Constitution was designed to stop kings. Mission accomplished. We don't have kings anymore. Hell, in the traditional sense, even England doesn't have a king anymore. We've got algorithms, donors, career politicians, and lifetime referees with no rule book and no timeout clock. Different monsters, same cage. But let's look at the meme's intent from a different direction. If the Constitution only protects real Americans, then who decides who the real Americans are? The politicians? The political party? The mob? The algorithm? Because once rights depend on identity instead of principle, they aren't rights anymore. They're permissions. You want the Constitution to say something specific? Fine. Rewrite it. I'm serious. I did. That's what a modern constitutional convention is for. Not worship, not vibes, not cosplay, restoration. A 21st century constitution with term limits, judicial reform, enforceable ethics, real checks and balances, and power pushed back to the people is not red versus blue, not left versus right. It's law versus slogan, structure versus decay, spring or stagnation. So I'll ask you, are we brave enough to rebuild the system? Or are we just going to keep arguing over memes while it collapses? Drop your take in the comments and share this if it roasted a sacred cow, because it was meant to.